Welcome to the Hoja on Architecture podcast. Vernacular Architecture. Chapter 5 Culture as an Input. According to this study, culture is vernacular architecture's third and last input. Specific forms of economies can support a limited number of people. Anthropologist Elman Service listed these sociopolitical typologies as bands, tribes, chiefdoms, and states in order of population rise. While matching them with the mentioned types of economies, bands and tribes are subsistent hunter-gatherers, chiefdoms are pastoralists, and states are those dealing with agriculture and industry. These social organizations were settled via the economic inputs but sustained with the help of culture. Speechless creatures adapt to climate-defined biomes via biological adaptation. As mentioned earlier, humans are the only species spread across all climates before biological evolution was completed. On the other hand, humans are gifted with the ability of abstract thinking, and, as far as we know, only humans can talk about beings they cannot see or touch. This incredible ability has allowed people to create cultures to protect themselves in various conditions. Culture is a complex term that is quite tough to define. Anthropologist Edward Burnett Tyler describes it as the complex whole, which includes knowledge, arts, morals, law, custom, and any other capabilities humans acquire as members of society. In the Encyclopedia of Vernacular Architecture of the World, Paul Oliver defines culture as the totality of a society's values, activities, and products, including buildings that gives meaning and direction to the lives of its members. This study prefers to define culture as what human societies can collect around their physical and abstract surroundings. Culture's definition includes a great paradox. As anthropologist Melville Jean Herskovits summarizes, culture is universal in human experience, yet each local or regional manifestation is unique. In other words, culture separates humans from other creatures while unifying us all. Because each individual lives within a culture, cultures simultaneously define groups of people, creating distinctions that shape our identities the moment we enter into one. Many scholars agree on the phenomenon of cultures being transmitted between generations. In other words, culture is not transmitted genetically but learned, and knowledge transfer is done chiefly orally. Though Sufi mystic Rumi thinks that not the ones speaking the same language, but the ones sharing the same feeling understand each other, linguist Tore Jansson says that if two people understand each other, they speak the same language. Therefore, language is a key element that defines a culture. However, language alone cannot fully define cultures. Nevertheless, language must play an essential role in vernacular architecture research, since many of the names of vernacular architecture examples mean house in the local language. Yet another form of transmission is writing systems, which anthropologist Robin Dunbar once argued allow individuals to maintain verbal relationships with a maximum of 150 people. Historian Yuval Noah Harari believes that only writing systems enable people to gather in larger quantities and develop chiefdoms or states, or, as ethnologist Claude Lévi-Strauss suggests, the primary function of written communication is to facilitate slavery. However, in societies that built vernacular structures, writing systems are either unknown or not commonly used, making the architecture a record of their way of life and culture. In Guns, Germs, and Steel, Jared Diamond acknowledges writing systems as a distinction between chiefdoms and states. Nations, political borders, or climate zones do not define cultural zones. A little study has been done on cultural mapping. For the Encyclopedia of Vernacular Architecture of the World, Paul Oliver redrew an artistic map covering 65 distinct cultures, relating individual ones to culture groups sharing specific characteristics such as standard architectural features. Since the cultural groups are broadly defined, it becomes apparent that we cannot usefully generalize about, for instance, Indonesian or South Asian vernacular. We learned that every island has different architecture and that this, in turn, may also be differentiated. Cultural products of humankind are generally divided into two categories: intangible culture and tangible or material culture. Intangible cultural elements include rituals, norms, music, religion, customs, skills, mythology, language, and other aspects that lack physical form. On the other hand, tangible culture encompasses concrete objects such as tools, outfits, and architecture. Sociologist David Emil Durkheim emphasizes that society is constituted not only by individuals, but also by material objects that play a crucial role in communal life. He notes that houses and buildings, once constructed, become autonomous realities, separate from the individuals who created them. A town is made of buildings while a community comprises people. Vernacular architecture provides not only structural shelter but also an emotional space. Within physical environments, we create cultural environments. Complexes of cultural traits influencing architecture can be summarized as relating to economies and life support, family and social structure, communication and education, beliefs, values and symbols, sociocultural continuity and change, among other factors. This includes evaluating building materials and construction methods, not solely from a technical perspective, but also regarding the standards and values embodied in a society's built structures. Vernacular traditions have evolved and been perfected to meet communities' physical and sociocultural needs. As understood, even since the culture map was also roughly drawn, it is impossible to categorize vernacular structures into cultural groups. However, distinct samples can be mentioned where the design's cultural effect is sharply visible. First is the Arabic settlements with a sociopatal courtyard. Since this is an introverted culture, structures of families of a larger lineage are placed around a central courtyard. This is also a place for communal activities, and foreigners are strictly prohibited. The second sample is from Far Asia. Since there is a complex cosmological system in Chinese belief, buildings and structural parts are placed in an orientation to comply with the famous feng shui principles. The third sample is from Malaysia. Stilts carrying the main volume are split from a single trunk to pacify the disturbed tree spirit. Moreover, these stilts are aligned according to their original direction of growth to simulate their nature. Fourth, the smoke hole above the Mongolian yurts is mentioned as the Eye of Heaven and is subject to many myths. Fifth is from Nigeria, where polygyny is widespread. Each wife has a separate hut while the husband has a larger one. The sixth sample is from India and about norms in material use. Here, some societies banned fired bricks in housing and wood in temples. In many parts of the world, the structure is expected as a human-scale model of the universe, and parts of the house are named in anthropometrical terms. Interiors are divided into dual parts: masculine-feminine, clean-dirty, life-death, and secular-divine. When the cooking and dining facilities are considered, there are millions of varieties in gastronomic methods and their architectural solution. Especially the hearths have cosmological meanings in addition to heating and cooking functions. Even the communal buildings reflect the culture in which they emerged. There are various meeting houses at the tribal level of societies. These longhouses, the chief's house, and the shaman's structure are sometimes built communally as a ritual. Communal places retain their distinct identities even in the more complex urban settlements. Turks gather in kahvehani, the coffee shop, British in pubs, Koreans in tea rooms, Austrians in wine shops, and Americans in bars. Finally, the symbolism of vernacular structures must also be considered while discussing cultures. There is a vast collection of ornamentations and patterns in vernacular architecture decoration. Famous designs include the Tree of Life, Axis Mundi, totemic poles, and Islamic patterns. Many of these motifs have ancient origins. They prove that religion and mythology still significantly share in vernacular societies in opposition to secular urban life. Surprisingly, little research has been undertaken on the aesthetics of these societies when decorating buildings. As understood, the local architecture is far more than the site it occupies, the material it is made of, and the knowledge of its construction. Vernacular structures are the theater of lives. This is the end of the Vernacular Architecture, Chapter 5, Culture as an Input. Thanks for listening. See you in the next episode.